Welcome to the Financially Independent Teachers Podcast, where educators come together to discuss their journey on the road to financial independence. Now, please join our co-hosts, Dave and Brandon, as they prepare to help other educators get fit with their finances.
Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1. We welcome back North Carolina high school educators Dave Fleischer and Brandon Spees, who educate colleagues about saving for retirement, host the Financial Independent Teachers Podcast, and are authors of the new book, The Fit Position. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having us back on your show. I love your show, and it's been really fun to see some of our fit followers showing up on the 403B Wise social media pages. And, you've helped out so many of the people that listen to our show, and we're always happy to plug your podcast and everything that you guys have going on. We actually, we're going to get to the book. I know we actually mention you guys in the book, and we actually dedicate almost about a page in the book to y'all.
Well, you guys are one of our action steps, as a matter of fact, I believe. One of the action steps, one of the chapters is, go to 403B Wise and do some homework. So, yeah.
Oh, I love this. Scott, we're assigning homework in this book. Well, the first voice you heard was Dave. The second was Brandon. And again, we are big fans of what you do. You are working educators who are making a difference on so many levels, not just with your colleagues as far as retirement goes. You're making a difference in the classroom. So you two are way more important and impressive than we are. All right, Dave, let's start with you. For those of you who might not have heard our first podcast with you, which we will link in the show notes, can you catch us up a little bit about your teaching career and how you got interested in personal finance? And then we'll ask Brandon the same question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in my 18th year teaching, all at the same school, all 18 years, Jacksonville High School here in Jacksonville, North Carolina, home to Camp Lejeune, the Marine Corps. So we have a very diverse school, lots of fun, constantly having kids moving in from Japan, from India, from different parts of the world. I have more culture having taught 1 year at Jacksonville High School than growing up in a small Midwest town outside of Cleveland, Ohio. So I love living in Jacksonville. I met my wife here locally, been here 18 years, and I'm teaching personal finance right now. Thanks to Next Gen Personal Finance, they've been pushing very hard for states to adopt mandatory personal finance classes for graduation. And this is my 3rd year in a row teaching economics and personal finance. The previous 15 years, I taught civics and economics, and I always looked forward to that economics portion, but we only had about a month to teach it. But now I get to teach personal finance every day, all day. And I don't know, ever since I was a little kid, just taken a fascination with learning how to save money and how to start a business. As dumb as it is, even growing up in the Midwest in the winters there, walking around this time of year in the winter, shoveling driveways and things like that. So I've always enjoyed it. I love helping the kids set up little businesses. The other day, we were on a family bike ride through our neighborhood and actually took a picture while I was riding the bike. Thankfully, I didn't fall off. And I sent it to our Remind 101. I said, guys, there are thousands of dollars of leaves out here ready to be raked in this neighborhood. Go around with your rakes and start knocking on doors. And I actually had one student do that and made $250 that weekend. So it is so fun to see the kids implement some of the things that we teach.
Oh my gosh, I love so many things about this. So you have your class on a text thread and you shoot the messages when you're out and about and see financial literacy lessons or opportunities?
Oh, absolutely. If I go take my kids to get ice cream and it says hiring and it says, $10.50 minimum wage, I'll take a picture of that and say, hey, Handles is hiring, or whatever the ice cream place is down the road. And we're always trying to communicate that way. Every now and again, I might even take a picture of walking into Home Depot. Yes, it's a part of the S&P 500. Make sure you're thinking about investing. The S&P is everywhere all over our town. You just got to look for it.
I love that sentence, Scott. The S&P 500 is all over our town, and you just have to look for it. Hey, can I get on that text thread?
Yeah, absolutely. We can add you on there.
Add me. I would love to see these. Oh my gosh, that is so impressive. Of course, we love that you're connected with Next Gen Personal Finance. And of course, we love that you got Tim Ranzetta on your podcast. What was that experience like?
Brandon, I'm going to let you take that one.
Well, it was awesome to have Tim on the show. A little bit of, when I actually became certified to teach the personal finance course in North Carolina, Tim Ranzetta was one of the guest speakers that they zoomed in, and so for those of us that are into this world, he's a household name. So having him on the show was pretty remarkable. I told Dave after the show, as a matter of fact, I said, does this mean we've arrived or what has happened here? But what a great guy, and just the work that he has done to, completely selfless, just wanting to make a difference in the lives of kids. And I mean, honestly, what he's done at Next Gen, I tell the teachers that come through the program now, I've had opportunity to teach the teachers now for one summer session. And then, the teachers in my school, I'm like, just go to Next Gen. You don't really need anything else. Honestly, you could just use Next Gen and you would do a fantastic job of teaching personal finance to your students. And so just what he's been able to do, and just having him on the show was really neat, just to talk with him for an hour or so,
Scott and I love any time we can get with him. He is so impressive. He is such a non-self promoter. He is focused on the mission, not on himself.
That's right.
I feel lucky that I know people like you, and I know people like Tim. The world needs more Tims. Well, Brandon, why don't you walk us through a little bit your teaching and education career?
Well, I made up my mind. I wanted to be a teacher when I was in the 6th grade. I never changed my mind. I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I knew I wanted to be a coach. And so that was all I ever wanted to do for as long as I can remember. And when I walked into the classroom the first time, I already heard all the stories about how, as an educator, you'll never build wealth. I looked at it as basically a vow of poverty. I thought, well, as long as I can pay my bills and make it month to month, who cares? I love doing what I'm doing. I get up every morning and enjoy doing what I'm doing. And no one ever shared with me that there was hope to build wealth. I never knew that there was hope. I just assumed everybody was doing poorly. It turns out there was a couple of net worth millionaires just down the hallway who were married and teaching. I didn't know it because, it's so taboo to talk about money. And so I made about every mistake you can make with money in my 20s and 30s. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes with money. And matter of fact, when Dave came to me and said, hey, you want to, I've got this idea for a podcast, I'd love for you to come along with me. I said, Dave, I'm the last guy you really want on a financial podcast. I said, I might have some head knowledge, but, and it turns out I didn't have as much head knowledge as I even thought at the time, but I thought I knew something. But I said, I have not practiced any of this. And Dave was convinced that, well, maybe that'll bring something to the podcast. And I said, yeah, as long as I can be transparent about, the mistakes I've made and where I've been. And I can do that. And so doing the Financially Independent Teachers podcast, starting at 3 years ago, I've gotten an unbelievable education. I mean, it was on one of the episodes that Dave and the guest on the show that day convinced me to open up a Roth IRA, for example. I got out of debt. I was working to get out of debt while still on the show. And I would tell everybody, look, I'm still banging away at debt here, And, but my interest in personal finances came from, I found myself in a position, okay, I've made all these mistakes. I've never focused on trying to build wealth, never thought I could. I started to become persuaded that I could build wealth. And it was really Dave that got me going down that road. I owe Dave a lot on this. And he was kind of like a financial coach, but just a friend, and coached me through some rough times where I was getting down on myself because, sometimes life happens and you have setbacks. And so, but Dave, always kind of coached me through those times. And I looked at my situation. I said, man, I'm in my 40s. And I'm just starting. It's a little discouraging when you're in your 40s and just starting. When you look back at, like, you open up a compound interest calculator and you're like, man, if I'd have started when I was 23 with what I know now, boy, this could have been a lot different. But what I don't want to be is 63 and thinking, wish I would have started when I was in my 40s, because I know that no matter where you're at, you can move the needle and improve your position. And so the best time to start probably was when I was younger, but the second best time is right now, so we start now. But once I became persuaded that a teacher can build wealth, I became very interested. And then I started reading all the books, listening to the podcast, doing everything I could. And I have really, the Financially Independent Teachers podcast has been in some ways a graduate level course for me, where I have learned from every guest, learned from Dave. I mean, we've had Tim Ranzetta, we've had J.L. Collins, we've had Rachel Cruz. We have some really fantastic guests that have come on the show. But I've learned just as much from just the everyday teacher who is making it happen on a teacher's pay. And we've interviewed many of those. And so I would say that kind of sums up how I came to be on you guys' podcast, which is an unbelievable honor. Really, thank you for having us on here.
Well, I think your story is so compelling and authentic, and I think it adds so much value to your podcast because, look, we're not all Scott Downhauer, and maybe Dave hasn't made that many mistakes. I've made mistakes, so I love hearing from people who have experienced similar maybe setbacks. You mentioned financial coaching, but you also were another kind of coach in education. Is that right?
Are you referring to being a mentor?
So Dave has called you coach in the past, and so I was wondering if you coach athletics at all for his, financial
So I was
coach.
going to say, if you were talking about coaching teachers, then I have been a peer mentor. But when Dave calls me coach, I have been a high school coach for years and years now. I've coached football, I've coached wrestling. Those have been my two major sports. I played football in college, actually, a small school in Fayetteville. And awesome. I coached wrestling, coached baseball. I've coached a lot of sports. Pretty much jack of all trades, master of none. If they need someone to coach a sport, they call me in, and I do the best I can. But when Dave calls me coach, that's what he's referring to. So,
well, there might be an opening in Buffalo in a couple months, so you might want to keep your ears.
Carolina as well.
Yeah, that'll be closer to home. Okay, Dave. Just a quick question about teaching personal finance. Is there one topic that resonates the most with students, or is it a variety?
Well, I'll say it's not budgeting. It's definitely not budgeting. I've learned that with adults and with high school kids, they could give two rips about budgeting. And, right now we're talking about zero-based budgets and introduce them to the envelope system, just giving them different things. We don't prescribe anything, but just making them aware of them and exposing them. But I definitely think it's the investing piece. And of course, they all have come up with the whole GameStop thing that happened. And now there's even a Netflix special, I think, on the GameStop thing.
It's a good movie. I don't know if it's
I haven't seen it yet.
Good.
But, here I am in there preaching index funds and the S&P 500 and, J.L. Collins and the Simple Path to Wealth. And to them, that's boring. But they're starting to learn that building wealth is often boring. It's not what you see in the movies. It's not what you see with the pro athletes. And we even had one of our main guests, a good friend of mine. He's a former math teacher at Jacksonville High School with me and was an assistant baseball coach for me. His net worth is around $2 million, and he never made more than $50,000 teaching. And his wife never made more than $75,000 in a year being a nurse. And they raised 3 kids. So he came in recently this year and he had the kids guess, how much do you think this outfit cost or whatever? The most expensive thing he had on him was $100 pair of shoes that were extremely comfortable for him for coaching. But his jeans were from Walmart. His polo was a free coaching shirt that was given to him 10 years ago. And they just couldn't believe that somebody who was worth $2 million would literally have on no jewelry, no fast fashion, nothing exciting, and just trying to break the stereotypes. That's a lot of fun.
I think back to myself as a high schooler, and I think I did think of wealth in those terms. What kind of car are you driving? Where are you living? What kind of clothes are you wearing? And I can see just the power of bringing someone in who is unassuming, yet there is some wealth there.
Oh, and the fact that this person is so transparent, he whipped out his phone, pulled up his Vanguard account, and literally passed it around to 32 kids in the class and said, hey, if you want to see, here it is, 1.5 million here. And then I've got a house. It's worth this. It's paid off. And the kids were just shocked to actually see that. And rarely do you find somebody who's willing to be so transparent. So I'm always appreciative of him. I think he's come in now 5 years in a row to give that talk.
Wow. Again, your class is so meaningful. I have a feeling you're going to be hearing from students long after they've graduated.
It's a lot of fun. I'll run into people. I literally dropped off books that were donated to a school across town today. Had never met the administration over there before. And the assistant principal says, hey, are you that financial guy from Jacksonville High School? It's a badge of honor. I'm sure it's annoying to some, but I just love shouting from the rooftops personal finance, because I think this could really change lives. It doesn't matter your race. It doesn't matter all the other noise that we hear in society and on the news. High school kids, if you just invest $100 a month, starting now as a 15-year-old, without ever increasing, likely you're going to be a millionaire in your 60s without ever having to increase as you go through the messy middle of life. So it's so fun to open up their eyes.
Yeah, I have had similar experience teaching college students, and I really liked my last group that we just finished a couple of weeks ago, and I'm pretty sure all of them are going to be opening a Roth IRA pretty soon, and I think that's just going to really pay off for them. I promise we're going to get to the book, but I have one more question for Brandon. Brandon, you do an amazing podcast. You educate colleagues. Dave is out here teaching personal finance in such a creative, passionate way. You folks also do workshops. Do you want to talk about those?
Yeah, so the workshops really, and really, Dave is the one that I'll Dave, you break in anytime here, but these are really Dave's brainchild. So what Dave did was he invested a lot of time in learning about our pension, our benefits package, retirement. And he knew that most teachers don't know much about any of that. They don't even really know how to even look at their paycheck. And that's not a shot at anyone. It's just, honestly, most teachers, we have found, at least in our experience, most teachers, they don't even want to worry about money. They just have a passion for teaching. They just want to do their job. They don't want to have to think about money. And most of the time don't think they can build wealth. A lot of them fall in the same category I do. And so what Dave found out was that a lot of teachers were not taking advantage of the benefits that come, not understanding the benefits that come with teaching. So he just kind of had a passion for wanting to teach that. And it kind of started from there, didn't it, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. It actually started during COVID. My principal at Jacksonville High School knew that I was into this stuff and she was getting closer to retirement. So she had me do a little one-on-one meeting with her. And then she had said, hey, would you be willing to put this on for our staff of about 80 teachers at Jacksonville High School? So she had everybody come into the library and I gave my presentation. And then it was actually one of our fellow teachers that said, I've got a really good idea for you. She's like, this is all about like being fit with your money. She's like, what do you think about the name Financially Independent Teachers? And I was like, wow, you've got something going there. And they said, this presentation was so good. You need to share this beyond the walls of just our school. So I started posting it on different Facebook groups in North Carolina. And now we've had around 1,000 teachers go through our workshops in a couple of years.
Oh man, I wish there was a way to track the difference you were making with students and colleagues. Scott and I always wonder like the impact of our website. I wish we could put a monetary value number on this.
Well, think about, just with 403B Wise, think about all the people. I think one of the most common questions I see when I'm on your Facebook page is, how the hell do I get out of AXA or Equitable? And then somebody will be like, hey, I'm in your same state and this is what I did. And this is the paperwork. And this is how long it took. Be mentally prepared for this, keep fighting or whatever. Who knows with fees of 2.5%. If you have, I don't know what your page is, it's over, I think 10,000 people or so now. Imagine if 500 of those people got out of AXA and the average account had $50,000 in it over the course of time, compounding. We're talking millions of dollars brought back into these people's pockets because of what you guys do.
And again, we always say it's not just us. Tim allows, thanks to Tim's support, I could do this full time. Scott can do it part time. All the people in the Facebook group, folks like you, all the great YouTubers we're meeting, Instagram folks, these young people are so good at social media with these. You had Emily, the financial coach from New York, is so talented.
She's awesome.
So she's doing 2 videos a month for us, and they are easily the most popular item on our 403B Wise Instagram page. And we're going to start embedding those in the stories on the webpage. And Dave just mentioned getting out of Equitable. That was our most recent one. I think it had over 2,000 views, the short video, within an hour or two of having been posted. I do something like that, and it's like maybe my mom and maybe my wife have looked at it. So anyway, all right, I've been yapping enough. Scott, over to you, sir.
Talk crickets when Dan posts.
Hey, we know the feeling.
We definitely know the feeling.
So speaking of social media, last time you were on the podcast, I think it was Brandon trying to get Dave to do TikTok, and he was resisting. So we're a ways out from that. Is either one of you on TikTok? I haven't seen you on there, but that doesn't mean no.
Still not on TikTok. Still not there. Brandon's kind of nudging me, but we now have a YouTube page. We've got a channel out there, and we've got to do a better job with video. We don't even have the 200 and some subscribers that y'all have right now. So we've got to build that up, start putting some more video content out there, and just get over ourselves that, we've got to reach people in more broad ways than just audio on podcast.
Video's tough. When you get to the editing, retakes, things like that, it's tough. So I feel you. Now, Brandon, you had talked about you're glad you're starting in your 40s. At least you're not starting in your 60s. Morgan Housel loves to tell the story about Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's net worth right now at age 92 is $105.3 billion. Good gosh. What percentage of that do you think came after his 47th birthday?
Oh, so much of it, because that's the thing. The hardest thing is to get that first 100,000. Once you get that first 100,000, everybody says it. I can't speak from experience yet, but everybody says it. And then once you get that first million, man, that second million comes in no time. And then once you get that second million, 4 million comes. I mean, you can bet your money's going to double every 7 to 10 years. And then even more so when you're as not really diversified, I don't guess, but when you're in as many things as his company's in, I'm sure it starts, the multiplier effect is unbelievable. But so I would say, I don't know, almost all of it.
Almost all of it. It's like 99.9% of it.
Yeah, for sure. And so like for what I've always been told, the number is 100,000. Make your way to 100,000, and once you get there, you'll start seeing some real progress towards building wealth. And so that's that's the goal for me. Let's see if we can get 100,000 put away through saving, investing. Let's see if we can get that done, and then see how it goes from there. So
I know it's going to happen.
It's got to happen eventually. One of the things that I always tell Dave is I say, man, every time I feel like I get a little ahead, life hits me in the face and something else, life will throw me a curveball. But the curveballs, I shouldn't say the curveballs. I should say just when life hits you like that, it builds muscle though. And so I think that's the message to people that I'm learning myself, is that, it would be nice if someone just came along and said, here's $100,000 to get you started. That would be great, except for you didn't build up the muscle that you needed once you got that $100,000. You need the ability to earn that, and to build that, and to work at that, and to go through the trials and the tribulations that come through life, and then make it happen. When you're right now, if somebody wants to, give it to you, or you inherit it, I mean, more power to you, but there's certainly something to be said for having to work through the adversity to get there, because then you are a different person on the other side of that. And I can feel that happening to myself. So that's important, I think.
I think it's great for the podcast too, because it shows how normal people feel every day,
right,
along their financial journey. I think it's so important. So now these presentations that you guys do, we need this. Like every state, every county, every school district needs someone doing this. So I'm just going to put it out there for our listeners. We did this with Carl Fish. Carl came on and we said, Carl, we need a book like yours in every state. And he's like on, what is he on, Dan? Like 25?
He's close to half. I mean, he and Tim are sort of in this wonderful race to see who can get 50 states covered, right? Tim is trying to get personal finance a required class in every state by 2030. And I think he's well on his way. And I think Carl is the same. And I was, when I was, Brady, you were responding to one of my questions, I was quickly Googling Carl Fish's books to see if there was a North Carolina one. I mean, I could see a collaboration, you two, with him. And in fact, we're going to talk to him tomorrow, so we could make the introduction if you want, because I think you've got your book, but I think this could be another way to get your story out there.
Absolutely. We'd be super appreciative of that.
Okay, we'll talk. We will bring it up tomorrow.
And I just want to challenge our listeners to, I mean, you can look, if there's any evidence that our listeners can do this, it's that Dan and I have been doing this for 20 plus years. If we can do it, you can do it. Dave and Brandon have now been doing this for a few years. You can do it. You can do it. And I'm sure, Dave and Brandon would give you some advice on how to do this on your own and help share resources. You can use the 403B Wise website to share resources as well. Teachers need this. It doesn't have to be a super complicated presentation in order to enlighten people. So there's a challenge to our listeners. Let's get this going in every single state. So the education doesn't have to come from the financial services industry. It comes from other teachers who just happen to be way better at teaching.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that, Scott. I just got an email last week from a representative from Horace Mann that was, you could tell it was just a generic email. Happy Thanksgiving. We're happy to come in and meet with you guys. And we just love teachers. And then I went to the Horace Mann website and I looked up Horace Mann fees and I saw 2%, not counting the expense ratios for the mutual funds or the insurance products they put you in. So badly, I want to be a jerk and email the guy back and say, never send a mass distribution to my high school again. We know about index funds. We're going to get our guys invested in Roth IRAs through Vanguard or Fidelity. Stay off of our turf. I didn't do that because I didn't think that was very professional. And I don't know if my principal would have liked that. But these people, they are borderline predatory sometimes.
100%. Predator is the right word. Education in air quotes is what they provide.
Yeah.
It's product sales.
They're ruining Horace Mann's name. He was an educator.
Yeah.
He was
of
the
some
father.
worth. Yeah, of some worth. I mean, God, how did they get that name and do that with that name?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that his name is more associated with an insurance company than it is with what he, because I had no idea that Horace Mann was an educator for years.
He was the father of the modern day public education system.
It's crazy. All right, before we get to the book, earlier, I don't know if it was before we got started or when Dan was asking you questions. When Dan's talking, I don't really listen. So I'm just joking. One of you said something about doing one-on-ones. Do you guys do one-on-ones like coaching or did I mishear that?
No, we do some financial coaching. On our website, people can sign up for either a Find Your Freedom meeting, or they can sign up for 3 or 6 months coaching. Depending, we really push the Find Your Freedom meeting because we think that is that brings real value to the customer, and we're finding. I think, Dave, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're finding that those that go through one 2-hour session of a Find Your Freedom meeting, they're finding unbelievable value in that. It's really moving the needle for them. Dave came up with a spreadsheet, which is he calls an adult scavenger hunt, but it gets all of your personal finances in one place. And as a result of that, once you've gone through that, and then you've got it in front of you, and then you share it with us, either Dave or Ryan, and we take a look at it, and then it becomes a meeting of the minds. Look, let's talk about all the options you have. There's not one right path here, but let's figure out what you're most comfortable with, and we're able to, in that 2-hour meeting or so, like I said, really move the needle for people. Especially trying to get couples on the same page. Sometimes you've got a married couple and they're just not on the same page, and you can sort of mediate between those two and get them on the same page, have the same vision, the same goals. Sometimes people feel hopeless, and they shouldn't feel hopeless. Their situation is not as bad as they think it is. And then sometimes their situation is as bad as they think it is, but there is hope. There's a silver lining there. And so it's I don't know, Dave. I think it's the most fun in financial coaching.
Oh, it's so much fun, and just playing around with. I'm not a great spreadsheet guy, but we have all the different categories, and at the end, it'll put all your categories into a pie chart, and it will show them. I had one client that they were shocked that 40% of their income was going to their vehicles. So we talk about 30% with housing, right? Maximum. They were spending 40% on their vehicles, and they had no idea. It's just amazing what people don't know because they're so busy with life that they just don't ever have this stuff all on one place. I mean, if you were to ask the average person, hey, you've got 3 credit cards. What is the interest rate on your credit cards? They have no idea. And we make them go find those things. And then, we're just there to lay eyes. And again, like you said, a meeting of the minds to bounce ideas back and forth. And it's really been valuable.
I have to say, there's a wonderful short video educational series around money on PBS. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called 2 Cents. And it's two folks talking about different financial topics. And one of the ones that resonated with my students the most was one that they asked the question, do cars make you poorer? And so it ties right into what you're saying, that pie chart said.
Yeah, 2 Cents is great. I show all those videos. I've embedded those into my PowerPoints. So 2 Cents, if you're a teacher out there looking for good 6 to 8 minute videos, check them out. They are awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so speaking of 2 cents, I got nothing. Yeah, I'm gonna go.
You're not even going to put in 2 cents, Scott?
My 2 cents. My 2 cents is you should read these guys' book. How's that for an absolutely terrible transition?
Beautiful transitions.
Beautiful transition. I'll take that 2 cents.
Wow. So
and compound it,
and eventually. So back in September 2022, we had you on the podcast, and you announced that you were working on a book that you had hoped to release in the spring of 2023. And we said, hey, we'd love to have you back on when you release that book. And that book was released in, I think, July.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's do it. Let's talk about the book. It's in 3 sections. I don't know who wants to go first, but let's go with you, Dave. What's the title of the book? And let's talk about the first section.
So the title of the book is The Fit Position. So basically, the book is all the lessons we've learned from our podcast over the course of 140 episodes. The podcast was kind of my way of pushing back at the narrative that Brandon talked about earlier, that teachers have to take a vow of poverty. I got sick of arguing with trolls on the internet that teachers can win with money. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to show people that we're going to interview others who are doing it. And it's going to be an inspiration of hope. And Brandon, he's an avid reader. He actually has a book budget in his monthly budget to spend money on books. It was like $100 a month. The guy's reading a ton of books. I'm not a big reader. I'm more of a scroller. I'm more of the Facebook, Instagram reel guy, like where I'm skipping and skimming through stuff. But Brandon really pushed this book, and it was his brainchild. So anyway, it's The Fit Position. And we have 3 main imperatives. The first imperative that we've learned through our interviews is that almost everyone we've talked to winning with money is that they are frugal. So that's imperative 1.
Yeah, that first imperative, and Dave was the one that kind of came up with this. The first imperative is the defense. We're sports guys. Dave played baseball in college. I played football in college. So we always think in terms of sports. I'm just an old ball coach at the end of the day. Well, being frugal, that's your defense. You have to build a good defense. And for those that are wired as savers, we talk about this all the time. Some people are wired as spenders. Some people are wired as savers. I'm wired as a spender. That's how I got into a lot of trouble. But there's a lot of people that are wired as savers, and they sort of are frugal just by nature. They just don't spend a lot of money. And so what we really talk about in the be frugal imperative, and this was something that what we did was we listened to all of these interviews and we said, okay, let's identify the patterns in the stories, and let's see if we can't boil that down into something that's manageable. And people can't, a lot of people won't have time to listen to hundreds of hours of podcast material, but maybe we could come up with a book that in 1 or 2 sittings, you could sit down and really get through all of the nuggets of wisdom and just the patterns that we've been able to see. And that be frugal was definitely one of the patterns. But one of the things that we took out of that was, everybody does it a little different. And so we didn't get prescriptive with this book. This book is not going to be something where we say, this is how you have to do it. We don't do that because we've seen it done a lot of different ways. I mean, everybody's frugal in their own way, but some people are what George Campbell calls bougie frugal. They give themselves permission to spend money on certain things. So for some people, hey, I'm never going to spend a lot of money on a car. Somebody else one of our net worth millionaire teachers leases a car. which is something I would definitely not recommend anybody do. But you know what? It works for her. That's what she values. And so she spends money there. And so we said, look, why don't we come up with a way to evaluate people's budgets so that they can kind of look at their budget and evaluate it. So we came up with 7 categories that pretty much covers all the money a middle income earner is going to spend. And what that does is now you go back through 3 to 6 months of all of the accounts you spend money out of, and you say, okay, where does my money go? And what percentage is going towards giving? What percentage is going towards housing? What position is going towards spending money? What's going towards, and you put them all together. And then what we say is, okay, now look at that pie chart or that graph or whatever. Are you comfortable with that? And what you find is that I was not comfortable with that. I was not comfortable with where the percentages, where my money was going. Okay, well, we need to adjust that then. Let's get this to where you are comfortable. And you know, like the one person, 40% of their income was going towards cars. They were not comfortable with that. They said that is a lot of income going towards cars. I'm not going to get where I want to go doing it that way. Okay, well, let's figure out how to rewind your lifestyle so that we can get those percentages where we want to get them. And so I think that in the defensive part, the be frugal part, that may be one of the things that I think provides a lot of value. It gives you a way of evaluating your budget in a way that is, I think, at the end of the day, intuitive, but not a way that we really think about it. And so what we tried to do is give people a way to think about their finances. Whereas I think a lot of times what we do, at least it's been in my experience personally and with friends, we kind of let it happen to us as opposed to imposing order on our budget. And so that's what we tried to do under the Be Frugal imperative.
That's and I'm looking at the titles of the different imperatives here for Be Frugal: building your budget, evaluating your budget, budget examples, spend less, save more, flipping lifestyle creep. Love that one. And beating debt. These are all great topics, and they really are kind of form the basis of what you need to do before you jump into the rest of your financial life. I want to add one thing here that I've been kind of going through with. So I have this crazy spreadsheet. I mean, it's insane that I use for budgeting. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, but I like spreadsheets, and I get into details. It's like super detailed stuff. But like, I was wondering to myself, I'm like, I wonder, I know what my mortgage payment is. I know what my property taxes are. I know what my homeowner's insurance is. But like, that's not where the expenses end for a house. And I wanted to make sure I was reserving enough money for when things will go wrong with the house. So I created this list of what I call like a sinking fund. In accounting, there's a concept of a sinking fund. So you basically start reserving for big items that are going to go wrong in the future. Like water heater, your furnace, your air conditioner. Things like that are going to happen. And so I created this to see how much extra money I actually need to be saving on a monthly basis. And it kind of blew me away how much money I need to be saving. I mean, it was not an insignificant amount of money. In fact, it's actually more than I'm one of those lucky people who locked in their mortgage at 2.375%.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And like it's literally more than my mortgage payment. The amount of money for my sinking fund is actually more than my mortgage payment, which I was shocked at. And most people don't think about those items, and they're not reserving for them. So, you end up, and that's how you end up getting into credit card debt sometimes, because then suddenly you have this big expense. The only outlet is a credit card. So this first imperative, be frugal, I think is just so important. So let's move on to the second imperative. This is my favorite one because it has the title of a great Taylor Swift song and a great Taylor Swift album. What is imperative number 2?
You want to take that one, Coach?
Yeah, and then I'm going to pass it off to you like we did the last one, because interestingly, so when I sat down and I was pushing this, I love books, and I kind of wrote the first draft, and it took us to the third draft to actually come up with the idea of imperatives. So the first draft was just 10 chapters, and so I emailed it to Dave. I was like, "What do you think?" But I felt pretty good about the first, what ended up being the first imperative, the be frugal part. But Dave was the guy with all the experience, especially with real estate. And I mean, he had all of the different buckets that he was filling up. He had much. And I said, so Dave, you're going to have to add some flesh to this. Because basically the way we looked at it is, okay, I'm frugal so I can create a gap number. And what, obviously, what we mean by gap number is that you've got the amount of money that's going out, the amount of money that's coming in, whatever money you have left over after you've spent all you have to spend for the month, that's your gap number that you can build wealth with. And so we want to build the biggest gap number we possibly can. So I said, Dave, okay, this person, fictitious person, has built this great gap number. Okay, now they have to go on the offense and parlay it into wealth. And, obviously putting it into a regular savings account is not going to get it done on like 1%, rate of return there. That's not going to get it done. We've got to do something different if we want to build wealth. And so, so then we kind of looked at the psychology of money, and we said, if a person is frugal by nature, they're kind of savers by nature, being frugal is easy. But if you're a spender, being frugal's tough. But also, if you're a spender, the fearless part might come a little easier. Instead of adding, items to your Amazon cart, now you're just adding, maybe VT Sachs shares to your Vanguard account bucket. Maybe the fearless part's a little easier for that person. So there's good news if you're a spender. Investing may not be as hard for you as it is for the saver who just can't let go of the money. But we said, imperative number 2, we got to go on the offense. We got to be fearless. We've got to, take that gap number. We got to make it work for us. And Dave added all the flesh to that one. I mean, it was bare bones when I handed it to him. And then he said, okay, well, he nailed that one as far as the investing in the real estate goes. So I'm going to hand it off to Dave here.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've learned through the podcast is that teachers are uniquely positioned. That's why it's called the fit position, to make extra money. So I think a lot of teachers view it as, I'm on this salary schedule and I'm only going to make this much next year. And next year I'm going to go up another $200 a month. But as a teacher, heck, who knows how many thousands of kids I've taught, all the relationships you build as a coach. Heck, at one point I was cutting grass and I had 40 yards I was cutting by myself. And I was making, over $2,000 a month, 9 months out of the year, cutting grass. And half the people's grass that I was cutting were former students' families, or I might even have a kid in class. It was kind of awkward, but here I am, I just taught a kid in 4th period, and at 3:30, I'm in their front yard on a 0-turn lawnmower because their parents hired me. But we've noticed with a lot of our teachers, they're not just teaching. People don't build wealth because of your teacher salary. You have the opportunity to build wealth because you have solid benefits. You have 2.5 months off in the summer. And I'm done every day at school at 2:13, and we have to stay till 2:40, and I'm free to go do my own thing. I've got a buddy that teaches with me at my school that made $55,000 this year pressure washing after hours after he got done with school and on the weekends. So, that's one of the big things in the Be Fearless section is it takes a lot of risk, and you've got to put yourself out there sometimes to go out and get that secondary job. And don't be afraid of embarrassment or what other people are going to think. Ultimately, it's your life, your finances, and your future. And that's one of the main ways teachers can make money: coaching, tutoring, all the different opportunities.
Well, I love this advice. And not to step on the advice, but I do pine for the day when teachers don't need to do that.
That would be great.
That they're paid a respectable salary, that they don't have to go do those extra side gigs. But I mean, this is great advice. I'm looking at the different chapter titles, and it's really interesting. I think people will get a lot out of it. And I want to add one thing. Brandon keeps saying VT Sachs, go buy, instead of buying whatever you're going to buy, you can purchase
Amazon
VT.
cart.
You can buy VT Sachs. And what he's talking about is a mutual fund from Vanguard. Just so you know, it's Vanguard Mutual Fund that tracks the, that's the S&P 500 one, right? Not total stock market.
It's a total stock market.
Total stock market. Okay. So that's
it's
total
the
stock
one-
market.
J.L. Collins wrote the foreword to the book, so we love J.L. Collins, and it's the one that he advocates for in The Simple Path to Wealth. So it's always the one that comes to my mind. And Dave's always real quick to say, well, we're not financial advisors. We're not telling you to go out and, but I'm always like, but I'm just invoking the J.L. Collins approach to investing.
Hey, and that it's kind of a great idea though when you think about it. If you're one of those people who kind of impulse spends, you need to go spend money on something, you can get online. You can get into your brokerage account, go spend $50 on, if it's during the trading day, maybe buy an ETF, VTI. But if you want to buy a mutual fund, spend $50 on a mutual fund. And like the next day, maybe you get that purchase, maybe your shot at your rush of oxytocin or whatever it is that goes through your brain. And like, there you go. That's your purchase. I think that's genius. It's a great idea.
It definitely, I think it's an advantage. Spenders have the advantage in the second imperative, I think, because so many people who struggle to spend money, man, that is I just had a client it's been a few weeks ago now. They had come into a windfall. They had inherited some money and they wanted to do something smart with it, but they were afraid of investing. So I talked to them about high yield savings accounts. At the very least, let's get it out of that credit union savings account and let's get it into a savings account where you're going to get 4.5%, 5%. So at least let's do that, right? But it was really hard for them because they did not want to spend it, and they felt like investing was scary. And so, but I like how Dave, when I handed it off to Dave said, he mentioned, because this was the first part of being fearless, and that is not being afraid to go start that business, not being afraid to go and make a fool of yourself. You might fall flat on your face. So the last person that we interviewed talked about teaching chess lessons. Well, you may put yourself out there and get no students and it doesn't work out. Well, that's fine. On to the next idea, take what you're good at and try to parlay it into a business in some way and just be fearless at taking chances and going to try to make some money. I really like what Scott said when he said he would love it if we didn't have to do that. I would love it if we didn't have to do that either. One of the things that Dave says all the time is that we're just going to deal with the facts as they are. Let's not, we wish it was a different way. We're certainly not saying that we don't want a raise. We would love to have one, but let's deal in the facts. Here are the facts. You can, especially if you're married, you can certainly build wealth on just the teacher pay. But if you really want to put that thing in fast forward and be aggressive, you may have to use the weekends and the afternoons that you've been afforded. And the fact is we do have those. I remember my father growing up. My father was a railroad man. He didn't get off work till the sun went down. He was working sun up to sundown most days. He couldn't have done a side hustle because he wouldn't have had enough hours in the day. At least we have enough hours in the day to make that happen if we so choose. And so, but a lot of people are frozen because of fear of putting themselves out there. And so I was glad that Dave covered that when I handed it off to him just then.
As both Dave and Taylor Swift say, fearless.
That's it.
So as we start to wrap this up, there is one more imperative. So let's talk about that real quick. The last imperative is be a lifelong learner. Who wants to talk about that real quick?
I think we could probably both talk about this a little bit. Dave, why don't you start it off and then I'll finish it up here.
Well, I think one of the things that we found is that things are always changing. That's the one guarantee in life, is that change. And we have a chapter in there called Shift Happens, that, even next year, all the rules for the 401k contributions and, Roth IRAs, you've got to keep up with the times. You've got to keep up with your education. And one of the big things about being a lifelong learner is that as you get your defense in place, defense won championships, but you still got to score points. You've got your offense in place, but we know compound interest in the rule of 72 does take time. Let's focus on reverse engineering our life. What does my life look like at retirement? When do I think I want to retire? And then starting to really understand the benefits of, at what age can I draw on my pension? How much is my pension going to be? We've come across a lot of teachers that in our state, they didn't even realize that they qualify for Social Security, and they've been paying into it for their entire career. So we have a whole chapter dedicated to that, of reverse engineering your career. And Brandon did a great job focusing on maybe some of the more soft skills of retirement and the other things that you need to do to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah, one of the patterns that we saw over and over and over again was that the Ebenezer Scrooge model for the wealthy is not true. It's just not true. I mean, I always thought of the wealthy person as being like Ebenezer Scrooge, in the spirit of Christmas coming up here. That's just not true. Most of the people that we have interviewed, I'd say all of them, in fact, they are unbelievably generous. They're generous with their time. They want to make a difference in people's lives. They're generous with their money. They are. I mean, if you ask them a question about how they're doing it, they're happy to sit down and talk to you about it and help you in any way that they can. And this idea of investing in yourself so that you can be a blessing to others is something that we've seen time and time again. So in other words, a person sits down and they learn all these things and they go through the hard work, the hard sausage making process of learning everything that it takes. And then they're willing to sit down with you and say, hey man, let me just give it to you because I want you to be successful. They get action, as Teddy Roosevelt said. They get out there and they're doing what you guys are doing. You guys have been doing this for 20 some odd years now, investing in the lives of other people. This is what people that are net worth millionaires and people that are really successful, this is what they do. The Tim Ranzettas of the world, this is what they do. And so one of the things that we talk about in the book is, you maybe want to take a look at yourself and start putting into practice some of those things. And the fact is that most of our teachers are givers. They just have to be persuaded that this is possible. And once that happens, man, they're off and running. They are off and running. They are learning. They are listening to podcasts. They are reading books. They are taking advice. And then they're the best people to enlist in this army because they can't wait to go teach somebody else what they just learned. And that's probably one of the most exciting things about what we're doing in terms of trying to reach teachers is we know that all we're doing is investing in people that are going to multiply, what they're learning. And so that's a big part of the whole being a lifelong learner imperative.
Well, I just think you nailed it. Who better to teach this to than educators? Because like you two, in my conversations, it is clear that Brandon, I bet you were such a motivational coach. I could see how players would rally around you and all the creativity that Dave exhibits and just these little tidbits of what he does for his students. You get people who know how to teach spreading this. It's just so powerful. I love this idea of reverse engineering. My favorite teaching method was the backwards planning, also known as understanding by design. Dave mentioned this. Start with the end in mind. Picture yourself in retirement. Just so brilliant. And I have to say, I have an idea for a new 2 Cents episode. It's called How Books Make You Richer.
Nice. Absolutely. Yeah, it's been so much fun writing this book. And because you've done it, man, what a crazy process it is. You never feel like it's quite good enough, but at some point you just have to pull the trigger. So we had been holding on to it for a while. We were a little bit behind the deadline of what we had said the spring, but we didn't shoot it too far off. We did get it out in July. And one of the cool things that we did in our local area is the county that I teach in has 37 different schools in our county. And 28 of those 37 schools have been sponsored by local businesses. And each teacher in those schools has been gifted a copy of The Fit Position. So our goal is to actually have businesses across the country donate this book to get it in the hands of the teachers. And so far in North Carolina, we have 6 counties where these books have been donated to the teachers of these schools. So we're looking forward to keeping that going.
What a brilliant marketing idea. Talk about the multiplier effect. Talk about compounding. Now, you mentioned you have a website. Do you mention that first of all, tell us the website. And do you mention that so businesses could go to your website and donate and participate in this idea?
Yeah, the website is financiallyindependentteachers.com. We do have the book on there, which the book can be purchased via Amazon. And that's kind of the next phase of this is we're going to put a map of North Carolina up there with all 100 counties. And we're going to start turning those counties red whenever there's donations. And we want to spread that whole thing. But we do need to do a better job of adding to the website where businesses can check in. So far with what we've done, it's just been relationships that we've built within Eastern North Carolina over our 18 to 20 plus years of teaching. And it's amazing how much businesses actually want to give back and help educators because they know that we're often underpaid and many of their kids have come through our classrooms. So it's been a lot of fun building those relationships. And it's just been shocking, honestly, and humbling that, one business alone in Eastern North Carolina bought $8,000 worth of books and sponsored an entire county of teachers. And it's just I don't have words for it.
Unbelievable.
Well, gentlemen, it is the perfect season to buy a book like this for the teacher or teachers in your life. Please go to their website. Please listen to their wonderful podcast. Gentlemen, is there any last words on the podcast, not on this earth?
We just appreciate what you guys are doing. We appreciate the opportunity. Again, we don't have all the answers. We're just, as we say, a couple teachers here in Eastern North Carolina. Now he's a principal, but we just have humble hearts, and we just want to continue to learn as much as we can and share the stories of others who are winning with their money to create hope, because there's so much negativity surrounding the teaching profession. And we do think that we're uniquely equipped to build wealth over the course of a 30-year career. And we want to show people how to do it.
Well, there's no better spokespeople than you two. You are just such a force in this movement to educate teachers, and we are proud to know you. Thanks, you guys. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us on.
Hey, thank you so much, guys. And
pleasure.
Hopefully we'll have a good finish to our football seasons.
I'm not confident. Maybe next year. We'll have you on next year. Maybe it'll be a little bit more of a successful season. Gentlemen, have a great holiday.
Hey, you guys as well. Have a great holiday, and we appreciate everything you guys do at 403B Wise. And we've got to send you a copy of the book so you can see the page that we have dedicated to you guys.
Yeah.
Wow. We would be honored. Talk to you guys soon.
All right. Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.